I'm going to show you every single one that I got right.
Not
Vindicated.
looks like 120.
What do you think it looks like? Viewer, what do you think this is? If this is full frame, because who even knows what's real anymore? Don't do that. What are you talking about? There's no one in the window.
And then there's like a darker silhouette in the window outline.
No, there's no silhouette. Don't Lake Mungo. I think being like assaulted and like violently stabbed by an intruder in my house made the test kind of hard. So I've had trouble practicing for a long time, but over the course of this month, for the first time, I felt like I'm actually going somewhere, which is quite nice. I've been doing minute stakes and a few small exercises, and I think I found my rhythm. I think I found my motivation to continue. So I figured we would just run through them. Let's run through them. I want to show you the various fruits of my potentially ill thought out, but most likely worth it labor.
Cool.
Yeah. All right.
Right. Let's do it.
Be prepared, viewer. This is another Zoom share screen episode. You didn't know share screen episode. Let's talk minute stakes first. Now, for viewers who haven't been watching us in chronological order, a minute stake is a cinematography exercise of some design that takes about a minute that you can do every single day of your life for the rest of your life until you die. That will gradually reveal some kind of tangible process.
That's not what the doctor says. You can eat steak every day.
Every day. It's right. Unlike steak, these exercises don't cause cancer that we know of. So that's good. Do not be worried by the amount of tabs I have open at all times. That's just the way life is. This is the very first C in glass I did for a long time on the 31st of Jan.
If anyone's unfamiliar, do you mind running through what C in glass is?
Well, it's the Kim Sargenius pioneered exercise in which you go onto a photo sharing website, like a professional photo sharing website. You scroll through the images, and as a gut instinct, in the space of 5 seconds, you guess the focal length. If you want, you can guess the aperture. I have gotten lazy because I haven't
seconds.
Not 5. I mean, it's hard to describe. When I say to the viewer, you do it in 1 second, it sounds scary, but you're supposed to kind of do it in 1 second. It's actually quite a lot of fun. There are a few gaps, but I've tried to do 3 of them every day for a while, which has been quite nice. As you can see, I didn't start off too badly. I was just guessing focal length at the start.
Yeah.
As you scroll down, you can see that I've been doing this a lot, fair bit.
Good. Excellent. Load of stakes.
This lady with the avocados was one of my first correct guesses, 35 millimeter. I'm going to show you every single one that I got right. 14 millimeters right there. Excellent. I think I spoke about this last time we spoke, where I've kind of found where I used wider lenses in a kind of gimmicky way, making my short at JMC. I've also found through this exercise that I just like the way that wide lenses depict space, which has been quite nice. Like it helped me kind of fine-tune my preferences as well. The environment that I'm showing you right now is the best way I could possibly see it. It's occurred to me now that it would probably be beneficial if I credited every single person who made these photos, but
I think that's more a future Ethan thing.
True, yeah. I've noticed through this entire exercise that I tend to be more accurate in the lower ranges of the focal length, like 35 millimeter. If I'm wrong, it's normally 28. If I say 24, it's normally 18 if I'm wrong, or 20 or 35. They're all kind of sitting within the same range. I got this one right. 35 millimeters, I guessed that one. 18 millimeters, if I get it wrong, it's actually 8. Longer focal lengths are where I begin to kind of screw up, and it's still happening now. A lot of my bigger mistakes were made in the longer focal lengths, 700 millimeters, whereas it was actually 300.
In some regards, with focal lengths, you probably should have figured out. As with anything else in photography and filmmaking, it's non-linear.
I've started thinking that. There's been a part of my brain where I'm going, like, this can't possibly...
Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact exponential, but I do know that at the wide end, for example, on a full-frame sensor, you can really see a noticeable difference between a 14 and a 16 millimeter lens. So a 2 millimeter difference.
Okay, so whereas exponentially the visual difference is less,
far less
between long. Right. Okay. That does make sense. I mean, that again, this is the best part about this kind of thing. That's something that I've observed and thought about that you have just put into words and then made tangible and actionable, which is excellent. Wonderful. This is where I started, or at least adding sensor size. This one I bungled really badly. This is probably the worst one I've ever done. I guessed 24 millimeters. It was a 120 millimeter lens on full frame. I could justify it by saying the full frame look made it look like a wider lens, but like, that's not even...
I think that's a mistake.
You think?
Yeah, that does not look like a 120 on a full frame. Definitely does not
Vindicated.
look like a 120.
What do you think it looks like?
I don't think you're far off.
Viewer, what do you think this is? If this is full frame, because who even knows what's real anymore? If this is full frame, what focal length is it? Tell me in the comments. If you get this far into the episode, even if you don't know anything, try to tell me.
I mean, like, if you're assuming that all these plants are roughly equal size, which I think, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be roughly the same size, then there is nowhere near enough compression for a 120.
That makes sense, because they would appear a lot more consistent in size if it were a longer lens, right?
Yes. Oof. Yeah, there's nowhere enough compression in that to be 120.
Vindicated. All right.
You know, I kind of leaned in just before. I was kind of going, was there a decimal error? But it doesn't look wide enough to be a 12 mil on a full frame. However,
it could have also been an Ethan error. Like, I could have just jotted it down wrong. Now, I get more into sensor size around here. This is where it gets complicated. I'm not going to start guessing aperture yet. That's on the cards at some point soon. I'm focusing on my focal length to sensor size ratio at the moment, because that's something I'm focusing on right now.
Sorry.
Yar.
If you look at that, that's a 12 mil full frame. Look at the clouds and look at the sky. Go back to the lavender bushes. That could be 12 mil.
I see where you're coming from now. However,
look at the texture and size of the clouds.
My only concern is that, no, actually, yes, hang on. I'm only thrown off because I feel like it would have a greater field of view if it were full frame, but maybe it's just been cropped.
But you don't know how big the actual flower field is.
You don't know that? Yeah, it's a good point. Well,
anyway.
Maybe I was righter than I thought I was. You may just see a little note here. It says parentheses, tricked again. That's because I was tricked. Here is the classic example of my sensor size fallacy, which I'm trying to beat out of myself with this exercise. I guessed that this was a 35 millimeter Super 35 field of view, the way it rendered the size of objects and everything. No, not at all. It was a deeply confusing moment for me.
Do you know why?
Why what?
Here's the thing about perspective and lenses. The whole notion of foreshortening and compression is about relative distances. It's not about absolute distances.
Right.
So the equivalent Super 35 mil field of view of a 24 millimeter on a full frame is give or take 16 millimeters for a Super 35. The reason why you're not seeing more exaggerated foreshortening is that the subjects are almost relatively in a line, equidistant from the lens. Right, so part of what I'm saying is that when you say that foreshortening you like with wide angle lenses, that I think also comes from physical distance, because you like the lenses being close to the subject. That's where you're going to see that exaggeration of foreshortening, because here my nose relative to the distance from my chin is probably about 40% of the distance to the front of the lens. Whereas if I'm way back there, the difference in distance from my nose to the lens and my chin to the lens is maybe something like 7-8%. Try this. I'm going to age myself here. Do you remember Australian tennis player Leighton Hewitt?
Not only will I unfortunately not remember him, I also do not do tennis. Like, it's like something that everyone watches and like, what is up with this?
Leighton Hewitt, his hallmark celebration was kind of this with a big, come on.
Oh, I have seen that. No, I've seen that. Yep, yeah, I've seen that.
Iconic Australian sports person.
Yeah.
All right, so to demonstrate, foreshortening is not just a function of focal length of field of view. It is probably more so a function of distance. And we're going to get Leighton Hewitt to demonstrate that for us.
He's here? You've got him in today? Wow. It's our biggest guest so far.
We're all going to channel our inner Leighton.
Inner Leighton. Okay, go.
All right, so we're going to do that. All right. So close one eye and look at the size of your fingertips relative to the size of the base of your palm. So you got that Size difference locked in?
Yep.
All right. Now we're slowly going to bring our fingers towards our eyes. At a certain point, when you get close enough, does it start looking like your beloved 14 millimeter?
Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, it's hard to put into words, but I promise I see what you mean. Eventually, my finger kind of matches the size of the base of my palm. It's because the distance. I know what you mean. Sorry.
For now, we
Yes.
can leave it at foreshortening gets exaggerated with physical proximity, regardless of focal length.
Excellent.
And this could be worthwhile an experiment. If you frame up within the moderate wide angles and moderate telephotos, if you frame a close-up against a blue sky so that you get no other references for distance, so that more or less everything that is in the frame appears in a single distance plane, it's extremely difficult to tell the difference between a telephoto and a wide angle lens.
Ah, right.
Now, if you line up multiple subjects and you line them up at the exact same distance to the camera and do the same exercise so that you don't get any other depth cues. And again, it's going to be very, very difficult to assess whether it's a wide angle and a telephoto. And now that you got that in mind, can you see that with this some mangrove, whatever landscape photo that we're looking at?
I can, yeah. Like there isn't actually as much of a difference in physical proximity to give me that cue that I would normally use to identify that kind of lens.
So this is something that I really kind of want to encourage people to explore, is that understanding that the focal length matters less than they think.
Shall we leave it at that?
Okay.
I think that of all of the exercises that I've done, this minute stake exercise, seeing glass, like I can already feel a tangible outcome coming from it. Getting a better idea of my preferences. I'm getting a better idea of the small subtleties that make up different
pumping the glass muscle, right?
Exactly. That's a powerful visual metaphor right there. I'm getting a better idea of my preferences. I'm getting a slightly more attuned, like gut instinct response to this kind of thing. I can guess it a bit fast. It's great. It's also a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing it.
Isn't that a confidence booster?
Yeah, it's excellent. It's wonderful. Like I love this exercise. It's excellent. I hope that at some point it will reach the point that I'm able to like watch a TV show and go, I reckon that's blank blank. Like, focal length synthesize and not be too far off. Sometimes we fail, sometimes. And this is important because this is how I evaluate. Yeah.
I heard a great quote on that. If you want to be brilliant, you have to risk being crap.
Let's get through the crap. Let's just wade through a bit of shit. Let's embrace the suck. Now, I could be over exaggerating it, but just it was a feeling that I had. One of the earlier exercises I did, we did this after the episode Checker 1-2, which if anyone who's watched or listened to that episode will know that of all the things I've been assigned, that was probably the most likely to suck because it was just a shame. And
do we just want to clarify?
Checker 1-2, that's the episode we discussed camera testing and my generalized fear of camera testing. And if you watch even 10 seconds of that episode, the intro is just a compilation of all the things I did wrong throughout the entire recording process.
And sucking the joy out of Ethan's life and existence.
Oh yeah, that certainly was a joyless episode. So here's what came out of it. I did an exercise with Ken. Now, I like to just bring out some positives. Let's discuss the pros. Doing this exercise was understandable and quick and tactile. Once I got in a rhythm of it and felt confident, justified or otherwise, I was able to just go, yep, go, adjust blank, adjust blank, adjust blank. That was good. I feel like I could do it again. Once I finished the exercise, one of the cons is that I don't want to do this again. There was just something up with it. I didn't really feel like I got anything out of it other than just the ability to do an exercise and like the validation that I got something done, which is nice. We'll see. Now, for reference, it was an over-under test with my camera, which is... I'm going to up describing it really badly, and you know that.
Any hope I may have potentially have had of not needing to edit this episode just went out the window.
That's okay. I'm sorry, if a kid is watching this podcast, go put the dark crystal in front of them or something. I don't know. Cocomelon.
That's scary shit.
I love the dark crystal. What are you talking about? I was just thinking about this. There aren't enough kids' cartoons and kids' movies. Don't screw children up anymore. Show them a bunch of bird people. Why don't we traumatize kids anymore? It's fucked up. Anyway, an over-under test is a...
I did not endorse that whatsoever. Not me.
Just saying movies for kids need to be scarier. It back in the 80s, it was just free reign. A G-rated movie could have murder in it. Now, these days, why aren't we teaching kids more fear? I just don't get it. Anyway, an over-under test is a test of your camera's sort of exposure resilience and there's a word for it. I'm going to use the dumb term, the usability of the output at certain parts of the exposure range. I did 2 tests. Now, Kim, if you want to potentially correct me and give the viewer a more concise and informed definition of a
actually, this is quite interesting because I am finding now, as you're struggling with the terminology, I realize that I myself haven't really given it a clear terminology, as in, like, I know the benefits, what I read and understand about a camera from the test. I really understand it here. Now that you say, ask me to put it into actual words, I'm not so sure.
You want to give it a crack?
Interesting. So I'm going to have to go and explore this, because it may mean that some of my struggles in teaching this to people may be that I haven't really explained it very well.
I mean, if any of our more informed commenters want to try and give it a crack, that'd be worthwhile.
Imagine like spinning beach ball.
I tried, and you know what? I actually did a test. I feel like I did, but I feel like there were just a few things wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So let's run through it. You didn't know screen share special number 3 is exciting stuff. You mentioned that I could try and test it with shutter speed because I was already breaking a rule by taking stills, and I was against it, but I did it anyway. So let's get much more sorry, I just did not form that sentence properly at all.
Sorry, is that actual internet bandwidth or is that mental bandwidth?
That was mental bandwidth just then.
Okay.
That was
second. More editing.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're not. I know you're not. Just carry on.
I know. Now, here's my setup.
Mm-hmm.
It's very bad. I got my gray cards on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
What focal length am I shooting at? I don't know. I didn't check. What aperture? 4. Excellent. Wonderful. Let's quickly discuss the elephant in the room. I may have used a specific novel series with a particularly vibrant cover design as my basic color references, potentially. I can't see your face right now because it's in full screen, but I'm going to assume it's Revulsion. Or you're doing that Duna thing. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. Let's not talk about it. This is -0. This is neutral exposure or correct exposure, or it should be at least. Feel free to correct me. It is -1. This should be 1 stop down. You note the change in shutter speed.
Yep.
2 stops down. Not very good quality for some reason. Oh, because I've focused on the Dune books. That's whatever. There's so many mistakes here. This is bad. 3 stops down. There's a teensy bit of grain, a bit of noise on Ken's face.
Sorry,
4 stops down.
Sorry. Can you go back to -2, please?
Of course.
Okay.
What's the sitch?
Now, can you toggle back and forth between -2 and -3?
Sorry, one of the images is... Yeah?
Do you notice something about the colors between -2 and -3?
This is the primary issue with my experience with this, because not really. Why?
Do you see it really going more green? -2 is a little bit like on the warm side.
What does that mean?
So here, -2, like all the way 0, -1, and -2, you can see your white balance is a little off.
Yeah, just a bit. Just a
right, now
bit.
go to -3 and watch the gray card.
Oh, it's evened out a little bit. Like it looks...
So it's gone more green because there was more pink in the warmth. Now watch the skin tone of Ken. Gone from a healthy kind of tan to I'm not sure what I had for dinner.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. Like, this is part of the test that you want to look at. It's kind of like, at a certain over and under, does the color response change?
And apparently it does.
Yeah. So, for example, even if you wanted your final scene to look -3, would you really want to be shooting -3? Or would you rather shoot -2 and drop it down the additional stop in post so that you're not getting that green cast?
I was able to perform this test, but did not feel empowered by it because I didn't have the eye or the expertise to actually get anything out of it.
Actually, sorry, can we toggle again between -4 and -5? Keep doing it. I've got a lot of reflections on the screen right where I'm sitting, and I haven't got a vector scope, but that looks and feels like it may have gone even a little bit more green between -4 and 5.
On a side note, do you want to see my computer's attempt to bump the raw file up to correct exposure? Give it a sec. That's tough.
It is, yeah.
I guarantee you there's an Instagram account that would say this is like an aesthetic vibe or something.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. By vibe, if you mean lazy as then yeah, sure. Oh,
yeah.
Ah,
Shall we run through aperture quickly?
Sure.
This is a better test in terms of I did more. Here's our normal exposure. +1 immediately. Even with my computer's we can tell plainly that even +1 in a lot of ways isn't recoverable. +2, watch my computer try to fix it, doesn't work. +3.
And you can see here, just go back +2. So if you toggle for a moment between +1 and +2.
I'm using the raw files, by the way. It'll just edit them, that's all.
Try and toggle. Now, watch the orange of the A-clamp, the vinyl on the handle of the A-clamp.
Ah, that's a change that I can see. With this kind of camera test, I don't feel awfully empowered by them because they tend to reveal a lot of gaps in knowledge as opposed to tangible growths, which I think is kind of it is the point. You're supposed to know what you don't know. But when I'm doing them independently, I feel sort of confused, which is not how I want to feel. But persistence is key. Let's talk about focal length again, which I've been really enjoying lately. And I did some quick tests, a bit of with my camera. Just an awful lot of fun. Got Agamemnon for these ones. I did one with myself, which just didn't work out. So I did it again with Agamemnon, my trusty companion. I tried to, at least relative to the size of my room, as you can tell, I'm kind of shooting on the diagonal of a room, sort of.
Yep.
I've placed objects at different distances, at different sizes. This is 18 millimeter. I've tried to keep Agamemnon's placement in the frame consistent, as well as his eyes. Using his eyes and his mouth as a reference point for placing him in the frame. 24 millimeters, 35, 50. Like, look at how fun this is to toggle through. Excellent, right?
Proper old school stop motion animation.
This was so much fun. This was a fun test to do.
Who's that in the window?
Don't do that. Don't do that. What are you talking about? There's no one in the window.
See the orange vase or whatever it is?
Yeah.
You see the window reflection right next to Agamemnon's cheek.
Yeah.
And then there's like a darker silhouette in the window outline.
No, there's no silhouette. Don't Lake Mungo me. I was home alone when I shot this. I will not be murdered.
It looks like someone slightly hunched over.
That's not me.
So then who is it?
That's no one. I was home alone when I did this. I will not abide Lake Mungo moments in this exercise. It's not happening. No. I'm home alone right now, actually. So
who's that in the window behind you?
Anyway, I think this exercise was a whole bucket load of fun. And also I saw very good results out of it. I think I performed it moderately well.
Yeah.
There are clear, understandable, tangible changes there. The jar on the candle holder on the far right appears
with the person in the window
larger. You know what? We're moving on to the next photo. Here's Agamemnon staring directly at you and making you feel bad for what you're saying. I placed him underneath a cube-shaped kind of mini table that we have because I think it'd be a good space to perform this kind of experiment. This is 18 millimeters. 18 millimeters. 24.
Yep.
35.
Yep.
50.
Yep.
This one was a bit less fruitful. I think I probably could have performed the placement a bit better. I think I moved the camera around too much. I think being like assaulted and like violently stabbed by an intruder in my house made the test kind of hard. That kind of thing.
There's no window here.
Pretty easy. There's no window here. That's a good point. This next one is the best one, in my humble opinion. I shot along the door that supposedly had an intruder next to it for this one with the candle holder directly in front of the camera, then Agamemnon, then this little jar in the background.
Yep.
This is probably the most extreme I've ever seen the differences. I ran through it the first time and thought, it looks like I've moved things, but I haven't. All I've done is change the focal length and move backwards. It is probably the most exaggerated and noticeable instance of the compression of the space that I've ever seen in my own tests, which is wonderful. Exactly what I wanted. 18, 24.
Okay, yep, 24.
35.
35.
50.
Yep, 50.
Now, let me give you a stop motion back and forth of this to show you how, like, it looks like I've moved things. Like, it's wild. But, like, it literally looks like I've moved them closer together. But I have not. It's the most pronounced instance of that particular effect I've ever seen. And it was very, very exciting. Like, it was wonderful.
Do not forget, though, you are also moving.
That is true. The relative distance between those objects is actually different for me.
Exactly. And this is a big part of what people forget.
So even though, obviously the focal length plays a part in this, because I'm further away from the objects when I have a longer focal length, their relative distance from me decreases, meaning my perception of their difference in size relative to each other, meaning that their difference in size, like as informed by distance, also grows relatively smaller. So like there's obviously the real world implications of it, but still through all the important takeaways from that anyway. So that exercise was excellent, and I could see myself doing it again in different ways in different scenarios. It was a whole lot of fun. It was easy. I've also decided that I want to do a get up and use my camera type exercise, like not a mistake.
Okay. Yeah.
Every Thursday, that's my day for a camera test or an exercise. I allocate a bit of time to a camera test or an exercise of some design, because I've noticed that I work better when I have a very specific routine and know what to expect in the day, like the day before. Like if I just decide to do one, I'm like, but if I expect to do one and know what I'm going to do, I will happily do it, even if I don't have confidence in it, So as a part of the whole breakthrough in terms of rhythm and persistence, that's been very, very useful. Like tomorrow, because we're recording this on a Wednesday, tomorrow I will do something else.